on YouTube. Thank you for stopping in for another video. Today, as you can see, the Cummins is the center of attention. Still got a little shop update, I should say first. This guy's still in the shop, this LOY here, the 05 LOY, about 1,000 horsepower build. Pretty cool truck. Mirrors are off the paint. We got the bed assessed here, and we're kind of debating because we're doing a roll pan on this truck. The roll pan is going to get welded in there, and the roll pan itself is right there. But we're debating what we want to do on these bed sides. Do we want to do a whole new bed sides, or do we want to just body work them, paint them, and clear them? Because with the roll pan here and with it being welded in, you don't want just like a random clear line somewhere along the line there. So the plan is to do the whole entire bedside down the side. Now, this truck being from PA, granted, it's a very, very clean truck, still very clean. But just the nature of the beast up behind here, you're gonna end up with a little bit of rust. And for him to spend, a couple grand on getting this thing worked in, the roll pan and everything, to put a couple grand into a bed that is eventually gonna show some signs of PA behind here, just don't know if that's worth it. So it's up to him ultimately what he wants to do, if he's gonna keep the truck long enough to worry about that, or if he wants us to just go ahead and do a whole new bedside. The bedsides on these, you can kind of see that seam right there. That's where they end, and they go the whole way down. So this whole side just kind of peels off, and then same up the front. So where you see this glue line like up into there, if you can even see that on the way down. So you just get two new halves, and a bed side's about 900,000 bucks a piece. So gotta keep that into mind. But anyways, on the topic for today, whoa, I can't just show that right yet. So to get you guys up with speed, and I apologize because I am an impatient individual. The LOY had those 20 by 12 Anthems just sitting there with the 33 Mickey Thompson ATZ tires on it. And I'm just like, you know what? That's 8 by 6.5. The Cummins is 8 by 6.5. I was like, wouldn't it just hurt a little bit, just to swap the wheels over? So that's what happened over here. The LOY traded its wheels for these. I had an extra set to the LOY just on some random black sets. But my goodness, guys, did that change the look of this truck. Wow. I don't know if I'd mentioned since the last video, I did do window tint. So the windshield is done 45%, the fronts are 20. There's all kind of light coming down on it, so that's why it may not look as dark as it actually is. But just a completely different looking truck. From a grandpa truck to this thing now, it's just an absolute world of difference. And I do feel as if they poke out just a little bit more on this side. And you get that exhaust tip, that look right there. Man, does that just look so good, but it's temporary. Also, I haven't mentioned since the last video because this just got done a couple days ago. We got a Rhino liner in the bed here. So if you remember, the toolbox was rubbing in up there from the previous person who had a toolbox on there. And I figured the best solution to clean the whole bed up, get rid of that rust back there, was just a full bed liner. So this is a Rhino liner, professionally done. I did one of the DIY kits. So my input on a DIY bed liner kit, I did one on the LOY. I used a company called Herculiner. It's available at like Advanced Auto Parts. Now let me tell you, when it was done, it looked like this right here. Like, it looked absolutely beautiful. As time went on, where there would be like shadows underneath the bed rail there, you could kind of tell that it was sun fading a little bit. Well, like 2 years later down the road, a lot of it's just straight up missing off the side of it after I did 2 coats on it. I still have a can to do a 3rd coat, like a refresher at some point, but it just made me so far gone, it's not worth it. So that's why on this bed liner, I said, you know what, we're getting it professionally done. I don't even want to mess with it. I had a full day's worth of time, just getting in there, sanding and everything, and I'm sure they got better tools. And at that point, all I have is just a little steel wool, just scrubbing every last corner, every little bit. So left it to the professionals on this time. It was done. I dropped it off, I picked it up, and you pay for the price of convenience and the much better product. Now, I know there's a ton of other products out there. I'm sure others are great as well. But what I really like about this is how thick it is. If you guys can see, that's like a solid 1/16 of an inch or so. They shot these caps right here, and there was all kinds of scratches and everything in here. So I wanted those covered up, and it was like a 2 for 1. It's meant to be there. And then that rolls real nicely down into here, whole way across the bottom. I went ahead and myself just hit that with some black spray paint. The the gooseneck right there, and the tailgate looks amazing as well. I also put this cap on because right up top here, there was like a bunch of stuff like that, and that I'll touch up. but it was a bunch of those little things just because it's a tailgate. It's used, and there's a bunch of scratches there. So this covered all that up. It kind of blends in with the bed liner there. So that is the update on the comments. Now what this video is about, as you probably already saw, is the custom lighting. So the lights on this thing are beyond overdue, especially with a tinted windshield. Trying to see out of these fogged out 1953 halogen bulbs is darn near impossible. I might as well just hold a flashlight. Also just grab this thing while I'm driving down the road and just be like, all right, let's see where we're going. So it was long due for upgrades on the lights. Now I looked at a ton of different options. There's all kinds of different lights out for these now. It seems like every Chinese company is coming out with their own version. But I ultimately ended up just deciding to go all in with them, do the full paint match. I don't think there's anything cleaner than that you can possibly do. Option B is just something like this, where it's fully clear, where normally like right here would be orange reflectors. And actually it kind of looks like someone already did that on this. I bet this one was so frosted out you couldn't even see out of it. But yeah, the other option is something clean like this, and it does look good, don't get me wrong. Let me get this on the tailgate and we'll tear into it. So first up, we have the third brake light. Now this was fully painted over. It's all LED on the inside, so you'll have your LEDs the whole way across here for the red, and then everything, obviously you won't be able to see through the paint for the most part. And it's just a super clean look over, say just a black or clear, like it literally blends in. It's paint on paint. Next up, and probably my second favorite part of all this stuff here, is the taillights. So these are kind of a one-off deal. The first time the guy has done these, and I'll go over everything at the end and where to find this and everything. But this is a very complicated taillight because this body panel is like molded into the taillight itself. But the lens, as you can see, it ends like right here. So he did a set of these, put them together, and he just didn't like how it looked along the bottom here. It just didn't look seamless. So ripped them all apart, put like a basically work body filler into here as if he was working on a body panel behind all the silicone and everything, so that it looks absolutely seamless. Now I'll give you guys a close-up on that. But I couldn't be happier how these came out. I think it looks absolutely beautiful, and it's gonna blend in perfectly with this truck. And we have the other tail light right there. Take a set. Now for the grand finale of lights. The fully custom projector headlights. So this is gonna have a projector in it. As from the factory, you know that there is no projector, it's just a light. And I wanted to have a fully painted light to match the taillights. So I wanted the taillights to be fully painted. I wanted these to be fully painted. When you fully paint something like this and you have a bulb in there, it needs that chrome to reflect to show the light. So you gotta jump through a projector. That's a simple solution. So projector in there, I'll go over wiring. A little halo right here, so that halo, when the truck is on and running, just no lights or anything, just the key is on, I'll wire it up so that it shows white. When I put the turn signal on, this will start blinking orange. This will start blinking orange, the turn signal bulb. Let go of the turn signal, this goes back to white. So it's gonna be super cool when it's all said and done. Now in the back for wiring, now normally he sets these up with HIDs. Personally, I just really do not like HIDs. I've had nothing but problems with them, and especially on Mopar stuff, electrical things can get very, I can say, time-consuming, problematic, stuff like that. They're just very, very, very finicky, especially, you know, Jeeps. Those are a very big component of having electrical issues. So the way this works now is I have a Morimoto 2-stroke LED bulb back inside here. I already did this. Unfortunately, I should have done it on camera. Took it all apart, put it in there. And this is a positive and negative wire coming off of that. So from here, we're gonna wire in the truck harness, which is one of these guys here. Now this is off the HID harness. I had to steal this to be able to get a truck plug, whatever that is. And we'll probably cut all these wires off so that we just have 2 hots and a ground. Now this is just for the headlight bulb. So why do we have 2 hots for a headlight bulb? One's gonna be a low beam and the other one's gonna be a trigger for the high beam. Middle one's a ground. So once I find out which is a trigger for the high beam, the way these projectors work is there's a little shutter inside of there. So you know with projectors, there's like a cutoff. Like if you had this headlight and it's pointed at the garage door, it's gonna cut off like right there. And that's literally a little, almost like a shield that drops down in. And when you put the high beam on, pulls that shield up, and therefore you have full light coming out of your projector. So that is what the little red and black wire is for. that's for our little shutter. So whatever one of these ends up being a high beam, I'm gonna wire that in to that right there. Ground, I'll just probably put these all together because it doesn't really matter on that. And then we'll have the positive for whatever the low beam is. That's what this will go to. Grounds go together. So now we have 3 wires there, 3 wires on our factory harness. Should be good to go for that. Now, as far as the switchbacks, the turn signal, halo, and all that, that is where this is gonna come into play. These are gonna go into a little box, which I believe, yep, one for each side of the truck. It'll plug into here. This is like a little load resistor, so it'll drop, or what do they call it, switchback driver. This will send just the right amount of voltage to that halo. If we gave it directly 12 volts, it would burn that thing out. Been there, done that in my younger and dumber days. We don't want to do that again. And then after that, we have a little harness that comes out of the box, and these will plug, or this will go, these 4 wires right here will go to headlight wires. So we will have, let's see, we will have a black, which is going to be our ground. We're going to have a yellow, which is going to be our turn signal power. And then these 2 wires will actually go together, white and red, which will just be constant power for the halo to turn on itself. So that is pretty much the plan for this, getting rid of all the whole mumbo jumbo. Actually, I'll show you guys the amount of wiring that would be involved for an HID harness. So you have all kinds of different resistors and drivers and that whole mess of wires to run through the entire truck. So we're gonna avoid all that. Those LED 2-stroke bulbs are really catching up to what an HID would put out. And as slim as they are, they fit back in here. Most LEDs would not. So now, who all this came from is Albert from Gold Standard Lighting. He's out of Texas. He's done all my builds at this point. Nothing but great things to say about him, especially this set here. I forgot to show you guys the close-up on the tail lights. How that edge is just seamlessly putting right into there. So you can't even tell where the lens ends and starts. It's all just perfectly molded in. So that is gonna look good. Such an upgrade over that look right there. First step is to grab the box. I got all the Jeep logos here from Cherokee and all that we debadged side of this, and chrome delete all around there, light bar behind the grill, rigid industry, so back glows orange, and then the light bar is obviously white. But man, do I get distracted easily. I'll tell you guys what. So let's get this thing wheeled over there and I'll show you how this comes out. Now the headlights are gonna be the most tedious part of this, just because there's a lot of wiring. Third brake light, hopefully gonna be the easiest. Now I have had fitment issues with third brake lights in the past when you think, oh, simple bolt-in installation, but it turns out to be more. These hopefully don't have any problems. The tail lights should be pretty simple, as long as everything works out well. With these aftermarket headlights, sometimes you run into things, sometimes you don't, but let's go ahead and get this thing started. Literally 2, what are these, Torx? Yeah, one there, one there. This headlight's gonna pop out, slap it in, plug it in, boom, back in. Well, that's about as easy as that gets. I think the third brake light took about 4 minutes. Tail lights took about 10 minutes. That's definitely gonna be the easiest part. The headlights are up next. Those aren't gonna be as quick, but I wanna see what all this looks like with the tailgate shut. Now, things I should say about this little notes, make sure you get your factory ones out. There's rubber ones that come in the aftermarket one. I could have gone a lot tighter with this, but it's plastic. At the end of the day, this thing wants to snap off and break this corner. Definitely, if you go too tight, you start hearing like, you're like, okay, back it off a little bit. You saw me clean that real good along the top and bottom of this, because that's the only defense on that thing sealing. Definitely don't want to have leakage there, and it's very common on those. All right, let's check this thing out from right here. Ooh, does that look much better? Man, it's just crazy how much some painted parts can completely clean up a truck. I really like how it's just that little strip and not a clear one. These things look absolutely fantastic. The fit is really, really good. Only complaint I have is this little bottom corner here, but that's not his fault. That's just the way aftermarket taillights fit. I found that the more you tighten those inner screws, the more it was pulling this back and then exposing that gap even more. So definitely get them just enough so that they'll stay in there. Worst case scenario, we back them off a little and put some Loctite in there to make sure they don't come out. But whew, that looks so much better. I'm ecstatic on that. I could not be happier how that turned out. Really just takes it from a grandpa to like, okay, we're modernized. We're modernizing the 2001 generation here. Now it's time for the headlights. I'm gonna head home because it's late. I think it's like 9 or 10 o'clock right now. But tomorrow morning, I'll be back here to install the headlights, and that'll be a lot more of an endeavor than this was. So see you guys tomorrow. All right, guys, and we are back here the second day. Time to get the headlights installed. So first step, get the old hood opened up. And by the way, the dash is doing very good in here. Still looks excellent from the last video. The only thing I'm having a little issue is some rattling. I'm trying to figure out where it's coming from. That's why I got that shoved in there right now. But I've just kind of been messing around. I can't tell if it's this tweeter. I unplugged it, it still seemed to make the noise. But if I press buttons on the radio, it seems to make the noise even more. So it's like, what could it possibly be? But I have this pushed out a little bit right now because I think this might be the culprit, but just second gen things. So anyways, I've actually never taken a set of these headlights out. But from what I've seen, it's just a few bolts on the inside. There's one down there. It kind of sucks to get to. I think there's another one back there. And yeah, we'll figure it out though. Well, this wiring is really throwing us for a loop here. So Mopars are known for their lovely wiring, as I stated earlier in the video with the taillights, but this is just confusing as can be. So showing you guys with the test light, I had this hooked up to the negative. So this should be a ground in the middle in theory, which by the test light it would be, but that has voltage to it, and the end one over here also has voltage to it. So these two have 12 volts on the end, we found out, but the thing is the lights are off. So no lights are on, no high beams on, the truck is just completely with the key off. Those two have 12 volts. You trace it back to the fuse here, and even the fuse for the headlights shows 12 volts when it's just sitting here. So everything's keyed off. You tap that fuse and it is hot. So that doesn't quite make sense. Now when you hit the high beam, it pulls away 12 volts. How that works and how that happens, I'm really confused on. It actually takes that away from there. So what I'm working with is just normal, you know, wiring here of LEDs. So an LED, you give it 12 volts, it comes on. You take 12 volts away, it goes off. So I'm not quite sure how that works. But this shutter here, it also needs to rely on the same. Because like I said earlier, one of these was supposed to, let me get this. These are just little like quick connect things. Actually for like house wiring. But the plan was originally, okay, we ground everything. That's one. Give this the high beam. So whenever the high beam comes on, it pulls the shutter up. This is an LED. So whenever the key gets, or whenever the lights turn on, this thing gets power. Power the whole way through. Shutter for that. Don't quite understand how that is all messed up, but we've tried so many different combinations. The closest we got it so far is the headlight comes on when you turn the headlights on, and then when you hit the high beam, instead of, you know, like actually lifting the shutter up to give you the full high beam, it just kind of like changes. It gets like a touch dimmer. You can kind of see it. You can see a little bit of a flash. So maybe what I end up rolling with until I figure out something else. But in the meantime, I must say that I don't really use my high beam. The only really time I do is like the flash one to come on. So the fact that you can actually see the light flashing in there and it would still dimly come on if you just pulled that back, maybe that'll be it. The next thing we're gonna do is try it with the truck running, because that's when all the computer systems are firing, versus right now we're just running off 2 batteries. So we'll try that next. If not, we're just gonna go with that option of just a dim high beam. This is what we ended up with. So right now this is just the LED getting wire or getting voltage from the low beam. So that's simply all that's going on right now. The high beam I have capped off, waterproof, and the projector, these two are separate inside of here and then joined together into this shrink wrap right here. So in the meantime, just gonna run the low beams for now. I'm gonna ask around and kind of see other ideas, or maybe if you guys have run into this issue, if you can give me some guidance on how to get 12 volts for the high beam, for the shutter to come up and down. So in the meantime, like I said, that's what we're gonna run, and I'll just loom all this, clean it all up, and then whenever the time comes, because this will be coming off whenever we decide what bumper we wanna do, all this is coming out again, and that will very easily come out again as well at that time. In the meantime, those wires are just dead inside of here for the high beam. Nice and clean on that end. Basically, I wanna have this so there's only 2 plugs. 1, 2, headlight comes out, headlight goes back in. Next step is this box right here. Now, normally for wiring these, the black obviously is gonna be your ground. Go on this end here. Black's gonna be your ground. Yellow is gonna be your turn signal power, and then this white and red is gonna just join together, and it will be the power feed to the halo itself. Now, as you can see, that red doesn't come out until it gets to the other end. Really no rhyme or reason on that, so those two end up just going together anyways. On this truck, I want it to be so that when you turn the key on, that the halo comes on. That way it acts as like a running light, versus I don't want to have the tail lights and everything on with the parking light just for the halo to show up. So I'm actually gonna take these 2 right here, which would be the yellow and the white. I'm gonna run that. I was hoping to go to right here to get a fuse that gave power when the ignition was turned on. So that way the ignition's on, that fuse gets power. Ignition off, that fuse doesn't have power. But you know, just like we randomly found out with the headlights, every single one of these things has power for some reason. So that brings us inside the cab in here. And one that I found that isn't used yet, one of these is the fast. I'd probably imagine that one, but this guy up in here that is labeled, let's see, they called it ignition feed. So we'll use that. It had 12 volts when the key was on and nothing when it's off. It's a 10 amp, so that's perfect size for us. And that's gonna be the plan. Get that all mounted up. As far as mounting the box, at least on this side, now I'm gonna actually cut the end off of this right here, because we just want wires coming off of there. I'm not gonna run the little extensions and fuse taps and all. I absolutely hate those little taps right there. Maybe something temporary, it's fine, but you know, that's not weatherproof in the slightest bit, and it's right up in the open here. These are gonna get wired into here. We found out this is labeled, so ground right there, obviously. And this far wire was the wire that gave us the turn signal flashing. And this one is the power that just constantly keeps this lit. So we're only gonna end up tapping into this one and the ground right there. Middle one we won't touch. Splice that in. And then this is the part that just plugs into the headlight. I plan to mount this box back up in here. It will be against this battery cover. So probably find a nice clean way to get that mounted in there. And then that gives us just enough room to run this harness up to this wiring and tuck it in there. Right now we have the 4-ways on. As you can see, we got the switch back going. And then when I turn that off, say I wasn't turning, it goes ahead and kicks back to white. Crystal clear. That thing is very, very bright. The camera's not gonna do it justice, but it definitely shines a good bit. For the meantime, I just have that hooked up to the battery right here. But now this wire is gonna get fed through the cab, through the firewall, and then right back to that fuse, like I was telling you guys right there. Fuse tap is in, ran up through the firewall with the wire, popped through with the major wire harness that goes down in right back in there. And this is the wire. Rule of thumb is in an engine bay, this should either have some type of loom on it or anything. In this case, I'm using this stuff. It's kind of the cleanest option. It's just braided wire loom, a little different than the plastic stuff. And this is the 1/4 inch, they call it braided sleeve. So I'll just feed this along the entire wire till we get back there. Be a lot easier before it's all stuck in there. Like this right here, this stuff that came factory on the edge harness, that's good stuff there. So the second surprise of this video was supposed to be something we ended up realizing that now is the time to do that, and that is a set of tow mirrors. So these came from Boost Auto Parts. These are the 4th gen style mirrors. Get a better look at them when they're on the truck. I'll explain them then. But we realized that, or midway through the install, I'm like, wait a second, I'm gonna need a power and turn for the mirrors. So no sense doing that twice up front. Unfortunately, as you guys saw, I already sealed this side up. This is the wire that came in from the cab, and that's the wire that's going to connect to it, and then it's going to run over to the other side there. But we need to get right back into here. So one side there, the other side right here. I can't use the same one because they're specific. So I'll help Jordan here get the tow mirror off, or the factory mirror off before it goes flying. Just got to get our plug popped out. There's a little grommet on this side. But we ran our wire for this through the door and then down into the door jamb there. Mirror is on there now. There's a backing plate that went behind that. You can see that plate right here, because originally this is just all open space. So now that plate gives you a place to mount everything to. The 2 clips, the new one is going to be the one with the orange and blue wire. That's going to be for the marker light, and then the other one's just the factory power for all the different stuff that goes on, all the different glass. And these are heated as well, and it has the OLED upgrade in the bottom corner. So this will glow amber when the running lights are on, when the parking lights are on, and then as soon as you hit a turn signal, this one will start flashing. I chose orange and orange, so these will always, show orange or flash orange. You can choose them, whether you want to have them flashing white, amber, or back and forth, or no turn signal at all. But I think that'll be a nice upgrade. Definitely makes it look a lot beefier than that right there. What do you guys think? Do we run the tow mirrors up? Jordan suggested we run them straight up. Jordan does not like the moose power. I don't know. What do you guys think? Do we run them down or do we run them up? I feel like that's a nice, clean, conservative look. Mirror wires are all brought up to the front here. We just poke through down. I can barely even see it. Down in there. Everything's loomed the whole way up. Going up the side here. Jordan just got those poked out by the fender, and that'll get tied in to these lights, or those wires right there. They'll eventually be lights. And then to tap off of the power that's coming off the fuse tap for the halos to come on, that wire goes up, feeds through here. You can see I got it all secured down with zip ties and loom. I'm gonna trim all those up. I might have went a little extra heavy duty on these, but I hate it when it like creases with the previous wire loom. So that runs down and comes out right here. That'll eventually get tied into the other box, the driver, right there. So that's the next step, is to get that tied in on the side. And after that, pretty much the headlights are ready to plug in. We got to get this one all set up in terms of wiring to look like that. Alrighty, this side is finally all buttoned up, believe it or not. So this is the way I want it to be, just 3 plugs, simple as it can be, 2 of them being factory and 1 being the halos. So actually with this stuff, these connectors aren't weatherproof, so usually what I do is I just put a lot of dielectric grease in here, put them both together. So this is the turn signal, where there's a bunch of different taps in here, but those are all sealed up and then wrapped in Tessa tape. And if you've never seen Tessa tape, this stuff is basically the luxury of electrical tape. You can see it has like almost like a fabric texture to it. And you'll see this on a lot like Audi, BMW, like the higher end cars like that. Even some of the new Mopar stuff, you'll see it in the interior, exterior as well, in the engine bay. But anyway, so we wrap that in there, and then any wiring that was left from running mirrors down through here. So the mirrors come to this. The diode box right there comes to this for the halo. I think that's everything that came to this section right there. Something else tapped it off for the running lights, I believe. But anyways, we got our headlight harness, halo, turn signal, done. It's just time to do the other side. Like I told you, the wire's already run over here. Jordan's working on getting the mirror wire up to here, and then I can start putting all those back together. This side, Jordan's getting this side all figured out. We had to test it all again because I forgot what wires went where. But couldn't be happier how this looks right here. Completely a factory look. I can't express how much I try and make things look, because before, you know, we've all done our installs in high school and all that, and you learn that wire mess, you know, you think, oh, just shove it in there, you'll never see it again. But truly, I've learned that wiring is definitely the essential of, it shows what kind of work you put out, because no one usually ever sees it, but for those who do see it, they absolutely understand the importance of it. So that's all tied up in there. That comes down from the other side. Now we once again just have 3 plugs, 1, 2, 3. This guy has all of his taps in there, completely sealed up. And the other thing is these fog lights. Now, we haven't decided what's going to go on with that bumper. Suggestions are appreciated, whether we do a 4th gen swap, sport style bumper, repaint this bumper, but these will eventually go. But it'll kill me that these are going to be yellow, that's going to be white. Now, let's be honest, it's still going to be like yellow no matter what I do. But to satisfy myself in the meantime, I just got these cheap 881 Extreme LEDs. They're from Morimoto, but like I said, they're absolute bottom grade, and I put them in something else. It's about as bright as a flashlight, so more or less just for the color of them. Subtle improvements here. It still looks pretty yellow, but
can't really do it any justice.
yeah, you can't even tell. It's pretty much just a change of color. It may even be more dull. There's a high chance of that too. Alright guys, here's the final finished up look of the headlights and the tow mirrors installed. We determined that they're best flipped down. But give you a little rundown on how things are run on this. Still gonna put that panel back in. Right there is the running lights. So that'll flip that on. That'll give our turn signal power. And then the key is gonna determine when those halos come on. So I didn't want to have dependent on having the running lights on to have the halos on. I want this to be on all the time as like a driving light. So we'll flip the key on. And you know what, let's put the headlights on as well. See those there? We got them aligned to what I think is correct. So that's a story in itself. But needless to say, they work right now with low beams fully. You can see the cutoff right there. Very, very bright. I didn't want, by all means, I did not want to mess with the HIDs and having to wait for them to warm up. And then you hit the high beam, it doesn't show up for like another, 30 seconds of the bulb warming up in the wintertime, everything like that. And not to mention the problems they occur with all the different wiring and everything. So if you remember, the issue was that this truck could not get both the shutter to flip up and the light to come on. It was either one or the other. When you hit the high beam, either the shutter would flip and the light wouldn't come on, or the light would come on and the shutter would just stay where it's at. And I put something on my Instagram story, so real time here, we kind of diagnosed what happened. The way this circuit is wired, and apparently the whole circuit up at the engine bay, is everything is given its power. It's a fully powered circuit. Whereas normally everything is grounded. You give it power, it turns on. So everything's fully powered. Once you give it its ground, now it's gonna turn on. So that's why when I'd hook my battery or my test light up to the battery, I was giving it a ground, and that's why that would come on. So essentially, normally everything gets grounded and gets power, but in this truck, for some reason, everything has power and then the ground gives it, the ability to turn on. So for right now, it's just low beams. Talking to the guy who built the headlights, if I did want to maybe do something in the future, an option is running a switch and just having that shutter, treat it like it's an LED bulb or something. Just give it a power and ground and it's happy. So I would literally just run wire to there, and then a switch inside the cab. So maybe down the road we will do that, if I can maybe think of something else, or if anyone has ideas on that. But other than that, that's pretty much how it turned out. Overall, very, very clean. I think it helped a lot, especially from the faded look. The mirrors too, I guess I'll put the turn signal on as well. And if you can't tell that we're turning now, I think you got some problems, because that is everything in the headlight and the mirror and the back. But in the back as well, this is all finished up and just cleaned up the look of the truck so very much. Now these eventually are going to get painted. This is kind of just temporary for now. I got a trip down South Carolina, so I wanted to have these on there for that. And that way I'll get to at least use the actual mirror version, because I must say that the factory ones that are like this small are absolutely terrible, and I couldn't stand those. So that's the way we have it for now. And I should mention, this is how it would look driving down the road like normal. Just the halo on there. So guys, with that being said, thank you very much for tuning in for this video. Hopefully you guys will enjoy the second gen content that's coming along here. Enjoyed all the lighting upgrades today. If you did, give it a big thumbs up on the video. It helps me out, tells YouTube that we're putting out decent videos here on the channel. So thanks again guys for watching, and we will see you in the next video.